Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for returning. I am glad you're here today because this is one of my personal little favorites to talk about. And to recap, if you have not caught up with the other videos within this theme, we are talking about mission-based books. These are books that a book that you would write that would further a mission that you care about, something that you're passionate about. So at the core of every mission-based book, I truly believe, especially if you are writing memoir, at the core of it is good storytelling. Story is the substance of humanity. That's my perspective, okay? Let's just get into a little bit of history here. Storytelling is deeply rooted in our humanity and our evolution as a species. That's how we've learned about ourselves. That's how we've learned about others. That's how we've learned how to communicate and passed along lessons that needed to be passed on. Don't go, don't poke a mammoth with a stick unless you want to die, right? Like the early lessons of cavemen. Someone had to figure out how to tell someone something, or, we were all dead. We were all doomed, right? So it's deeply rooted in our survival as a species, but it's how we've learned how to connect with our individual tribes, if you will, communities, and as a globe. In this day and age, when we have technology at our fingertips that we can literally, it's like a couple clicks and we're connected with people across the world, that's amazing. If we are telling stories, even if they're in a different language, the emotional element of a good story is always so palpable that it's like we speak the same language at the heart of it, and that language is story. That's how I would describe my view on story. Story is what humanizes all of us down to our cores. So, why am I talking about story when I'm talking about mission-based books? Because a mission is something that will help make this world a better place. And if we are connected as a world by story, then you really want to deep dive into making sure that your book is an excellent story and it has story strength, meaning you're utilizing these elements that really bring that story to the surface as a connection point, as something we can just grab onto and say, yep, we get it. We're feeling it. We understand this. So this might be, we might need to spend a little time talking about this, but I first want you to know that no matter what, you are already an excellent storyteller. All you need to do is believe you are. Storytelling is in your blood. You're a human, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a couple dogs or cats out there listening to me today. Either way, storytelling is in your blood if you're a human. It's just in your DNA. So you're already a great storyteller. I just need you to believe me, believe in yourself, and let's continue the conversation. Do not doubt that you can do this. So how I look at story and making it a great story is that your story must have a theme, okay? S-E-A-M. It must have a theme. S in the word theme stands for structure. A good story needs to have structure, and at its basic core, it's a beginning, middle, and end, okay? It's, builds up to a climax and then it releases. You're telling an engaging story because it has structure and you're taking us along for the ride. It's not just a straight line. It's not something that bounces around in a confusing way. It has structure. Now, I probably have spent hours and hours just within the context of these video lessons talking about structure. So I'm not going to go into it here, but just know whatever structure your story has is good for your story because you've chosen it, as long as it has a structure. Okay? All right. So that's the S in theme. Next, your story needs to be emotional, right? We've talked about this. A good story has to have emotion. It has to have elements that actually release hormones in your reader. Let's talk about this for a second because I find this so fascinating. A good story will release the same hormones in your readers that's released when we fall in love, for example. Dopamine. Dopamine means that your readers are going to be more focused, motivated, they're going to have better memory. That's what dopamine does for us. When we are engaged with the story and we feel things, dopamine's released. Another hormone that's released in a good story is oxytocin. When this is, remember, this is that the bonding hormone between moms and babies, right? That's what happens when a mother and a baby are bonding. People who have oxytocin release are more generous, they're more trusting. It forms that bond. Those are all things you want from your reader. You want them to trust you. So you need to, we'll go into how to do this in another video, but a good story will release dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins. Those are the hormones that make us more creative, more relaxed, focused again. When we have those hormones released as readers, we are there with you. If we don't feel anything, no hormones are going to be released. So make sure those emotional connections in your story are built. And that's like the tip of the iceberg for this topic. So I want you to know that I'm leaving you hanging here. We don't have time to go into that today, as far as how to release these things. But, tension is a good example on how to release something like dopamine or endorphins. You're building something up and we're on the edge of our seat. So using tension strategies, that type of thing. So we'll go more into that. But emotion. A good story needs to have structure, emotion, and it needs to be authentic. That's the A. You've heard me say it before. This is your story. You get to tell it how you want, but it must be true to you. It must be you on the page. You must be open and vulnerable and human and willing to just be imperfect. Okay? I have a friend who's super upset that he's human because that means he's not perfect. And one of my favorite things to do is just remind him that he is human and that he's loved because he's human. And we're all imperfect. We're all messy and chaotic and wild and, all of that, okay? That means we're human. And guess what? If you're trying to put on a front that shows us that you're not any of that, or that you didn't make a giant mess of your life at some point, that's part of your story, your readers are they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that you're holding back, that you're trying to build this protective wall, and you're not going to get us secreting oxytocin. We're not going to trust you. We're not going to bond with you because we don't feel for you. We don't have empathy for you. Empathy is, when you can help us feel empathy for you, that's one of the things that happens. Oxytocin is secreted. Anyway, so you need to be authentic so that we can feel for you. We can see that you are telling us the truth, putting your truth out there in the big, scary world, bravely, courageously, and just true to you, okay? So structure, emotion, authenticity, and meaning. That's M. Gotta have meaning. Your story must have meaning. It must be meaningful to you, but it must be meaningful to your readers. It must be what people actually care about. And when I say people, we're talking maybe about your specific readers. Maybe not everyone cares about everything, right? That's okay. You're only speaking to the people that need to hear your story. But it must be meaningful. It must portray meaning. And when you feel meaning for something, typically that means your readers will also feel meaning for it. So it needs to have meaning. There needs to be depth to it. When all of those things are strung together and your story has a theme running through it, it has structure, emotion, authenticity, and meaning, then you have a good, juicy story. And we're like, yes. And we can extract the goodness out of it. And when your story speaks to people like that, it will further your mission. It will get your message out there. People will talk about it. They will tell people about this amazing book they read and about this amazing story that they took with them. Have you ever watched a movie where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna, like, you just think about it for days, or finished a book and you just think about it for days? It's something stuck with you. That's the type of emotional connection that you want your book to have with your readers so that it furthers your mission. So do some research and learn about how to be a good storyteller, because at the very basic foundation of a good book is a good story, right? That's my thoughts. That's my 2 cents that you didn't ask for. Actually, you probably did if you're watching this, right? There we go. You're welcome. I'm so glad that you are here learning how to write a mission-based book. And of course, I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. What do you think a good story needs to have? What is a good story to you? Let me hear it.